From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined with our super producer, Paul Mission Control Decant. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know, coming to you directly from Earth. That was a good way to open it, right?
Just
get in front of that. We get that question pretty often.
Earth Realm. Guys, I'm sorry, I've been playing the new Mortal Kombat a lot lately, so I will exclusively refer to this planet as Earth Realm.
Tight. Love it. In Neil Stephenson's Anathema, which is a fantastic, by the way, examination of multidimensional stuff that I want to spoil. But cool, in that one, there are different versions of Earth, and they all have a name derived from if dominant civilizations went a different way. So there's like La Terre, where sort of France became like the United Kingdom, basically. Anyway.
Nice. Shang Tsung.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Tekken 8 is coming out, too.
Oh,
what is it?
Yeah.
Tekken 8 is coming out.
That's fine. I've never been a Tekken head, but the new Mortal Kombat is like a reboot, kind of, almost like Marvel Cinematic Universe style, where it's sort of like a multiversal version of the whole Mortal Kombat lore, which has never been like that deep, but they really do a good job with it. And man, some of the cinematics in it, you look at it and you think you're watching a movie. I mean, they've really gotten kind of bonkers.
They're good with the cutscenes, but I am a Tekken head. Tekken forever.
Bring me Kuma any day.
Is that the one with the panda? Was that the one where you play as a giant panda?
Yes.
It's a bear. It's a bear.
Well, they're different skins.
Isn't he black and white? And then there's also isn't there a boxing kangaroo named Roger? Did I make that up?
Yeah. Roger comes and goes. It depends on the iteration.
The iteration. Got it.
But it does not have any good aliens. They're not good aliens in Tekken, and it's also a problem in astronomy, at least for the casual fans, because there are no good aliens in astronomy. There are actually zero proven aliens. I know, but it's a pickle. We talked about the Fermi paradox in the past. It is mathematically certain that life has to exist somewhere out in the ink, but those same numbers that make life statistically inevitable make it highly improbable, almost certain, that human life and these other life forms will not interact directly. Right? That's the great bummer.
Well, and it's just so far away.
Yeah, so much time too.
Yeah,
you know,
you sounded so pouty just then, Matt. I love
it.
It's a pout-worthy thing.
It is. It really is a bit of a bummer.
I mean, just the fact that we can see so far back in time and through space, but there's just no way to do anything about it. Or we've come up with some really interesting ways, and we're going to talk about some today to potentially do something about it. But again, it's the time. The time is the problem. You're right, Ben.
Yeah, you haven't thought about the time. Yeah,
who has the time?
Yeah, we flip it around. You know, there is another sapient sentient civilization way out there in the dark, and they are seeing light, or they are able to observe Earth. They're going to see dinosaurs and stuff. They have no idea that we made Velcro and Tang and quesadillas. They're so behind on Earth life.
The great wonders of the world that you just mentioned there in one go.
There we go.
That would be pretty amazing if some life saw plesiosaurs walking around and they got here and they found quesadillas.
I think I've mentioned this before, but it always reminds me of this really wonderful episode of Pete, The Adventures of Pete and Pete, called Johnny Unitas and the Universe, where there's this character who's like becomes friends with Pete, and he's a little off. He's kind of nerdy, and spoiler alert, I guess, for a 20-year-old show, but it turns out he's an alien, and he experienced Earth through these transmissions of TV signals, but there was such a delay that he saw this, like, Johnny Unitas, who's like a famous like football star. He saw his big game as it was happening for him, but it was actually like, you know, decades later for when it actually happened on Earth. Really, really interesting episode. Very thoughtful and sweet.
we see that time dilation idea in a lot of fiction because it's something people have always thought about, just the harrowing, astonishing math of what we call the universe, which is the observable universe for Earthlings. In tonight's episode, we're returning to something we talked about in Strange News a while back. Did a Harvard astrophysicist, Avi Loeb, find proof of alien life? Here are the facts. Okay, first off, not a wingnut. We have to say that. This is a really, really smart guy.
Oh, yeah. I don't think any relation to the Lisa Loeb of 9 Stories and Stay fame. But Professor Loeb is a storied scholar, well, not a member of 9 Stories, with tons of accolades under his belt across the course of a decades-spanning career. Born on February 26th of 1962, he possesses a bachelor and a master's and a PhD. What a show-off. All from Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And currently he is the Frank B. Baird Jr. Professor of Science at Harvard University. That sounds like some accolades that are pretty legit, some bona fides, if you will.
Oh, yeah. If any of that sounds familiar, Ben, you brought this up, I think, on Strange News back in September last year. That's why I was like, oh, yeah, this is all coming back. So Avi Loeb is a fascinating person. Before we cannot understate this. This is a learned scientist who is interested in the things that you're probably interested in, what's going on out there, and he is working towards it. So when we get into some of the claims and some of the things he's pursuing, this is a scientist that knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and also, to be fair, we're going to have to correct or clarify some, I would say, not quite misreporting, but maybe misframing of what he is doing, because in the headlines so often we hear stuff like Harvard, scientist, aliens, and those are the only 3 words you walk away with from the headline. And that's doing a disservice to some really important pioneering and quite difficult science.
But it also reminds me of kind of what's going on with some of these disclosure stories, and it's a bit heartening where you start to hear reports from folks who have skin in the game, who are politicians or former politicians and or government officials who are coming out and saying there's some sand to this stuff. So when you add in folks like Loeb, it really makes you start to think, maybe there is something to all this alien talk.
Yeah. And he's also, by all accounts, is a really chill hang, a really nice guy. Cool. And he's got that gift that some of our favorite scientists exhibit, which is being able to explain tremendously complex things in approachable, understandable ways. That's how you know someone genuinely understands what they're talking about.
Science communicator.
There's one article that I think we all read for this where he puts on like a one-man show in his attic or something for a reporter who shows up to describe and to help communicate what's going on in his life.
It's cool. He also will, because again, he's been doing this for quite some time. You can see any number of interviews with him. People just show up at his house and he's like, hey, sit down. And they have a conversation and they get to the actual questions. But there's also a lot of hanging out discursive conversation when it's like, Stephen Hawking sat right where you're sitting and, my wife cooked him dinner and I just want you to know he ate everything. And the guy's like, cool. Okay. Thanks, Doc.
No, but that's just a sign of someone who's genuinely passionate about their field, not just in this isolated academic bubble that we often, see. This is someone who wants to spread the word beyond those kind of niche corners of Harvard and academia.
Yeah, he's written quite a robust body of scientific literature. He has made notable contributions to multiple fields of physics and astronomy. He's written or co-written around 800 different papers. He's published textbooks, popular science books, the stuff that's meant to be accessible to the public. And then with those popular science or, kind of layperson named books, we start to see indications of his interest. Books like Extraterrestrial, The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth, 2021, or Interstellar, not the movie, Interstellar, The Search for Extraterrestrial Life and Our Future in the Stars, published just last year in 2023. He co-founded the Galileo Project. All they do is try to find evidence of interstellar objects or some sort of extraterrestrial intelligence. I mean, we could spend hours talking about this. Exoplanets, gravitational lensing, which I did not know about. Thank you, Dr. Loeb. Gamma ray burst, etc.
And let's talk about, just really quickly, this Starshot mission. This is something that is so interesting to me. And I think maybe one of the biggest takeaways is something that's stated in an article written for Scientific American by Anne Finkbeiner. So the concept is to create these tiny little, almost weightless things that would be a solar sail attached to a microchip, like the microchip that you'd find in your cell phone. And you literally shoot a laser at this thing once it's in orbit, and it ends up accelerating to about 20% the speed of light and can get out to like Alpha Centauri in like 4 to 5 years. But just the whole idea is that it would fly past another star system and take some pictures and then take like 5 years to send it back to Earth. But just that concept, like Avi was on the team that was developing this project, and that kind of thing is so amazing, but the only reason it was even possible as a concept is because this billionaire, Yuri Milner, he was a billionaire, and he was like, well, let's try something crazy. Here's $100 million. Let's put a team together and find out if we can do it.
Quick reminder, solar sails, that is existing technology, right? That's not just conceptual, or is it? I think it is kind of conceptual still.
Everything in the project when it was created was conceptual. Like a possibility.
Solar sail is a material or a technology that essentially harnesses solar radiation to propel something using this material, right?
Yeah, it has been. It's one of those like science fiction becoming fact things, because it has been, I think, used first in like 2010, so it's still got that new car smell. But it is cool stuff. And unfortunately, another big part of doing, the big kid science is the constant quest for funding. Right?
Well, yeah. One of the main points in that article was that NASA has to go slow, has to get funding, it could lose funding for a major project at any moment. But when you're a billionaire, you literally just throw a bunch of money on the table and you say, let's do this.
Let's get weird with it. Private industry is huge in space exploration and astronomy. I want to shout out an astrobiologist, Karen J. Meach, who has a fantastic TED Talk about something that really brought Professor Loeb's name to the public sphere. For this story, let's start around December of 2017. The entire world of astronomy is abuzz because they've tracked something unusual. Oumuamua is what they ended up calling it. And boffins like Professor Karen Meach were I don't want to say over the moon, but they were fascinated with it because it was so weird. Its first name was super unsexy. It was like 1I/2017 U1, because that's how they, name all the stuff in the sky. And what they found is that, first off, they caught it late. When it was first observed, it was about 21 million miles from Earth. It was already heading away from the sun. So it's like you walk outside of a gas station and you see a car driving away from the parking lot, getting back on the interstate. That's exactly what it was like. But the scary part is human beings at large did not know about this like half-mile long, very unusual ovular or cylindrical object until after it had reached its closest point to Earth, about 15 million miles away, super close in astronomical terms.
Well, yeah, and because the thing, kind of like those little solar microchips we were talking about, the plan to like send them so fast, this thing was traveling over like somewhere between 59,000 miles per hour and 80-something thousand miles per hour. So you literally, I mean, imagine just like it's just flying across. And it was an interstellar object, right? It's been confirmed that thing originated outside of our star system and just kind of did a flyby.
And no one knows how it started going. No one knows, it's like a Cotton-Eye Joe of space, right? We don't know where it's going to end up.
How could you invoke that in my presence?
So,
Never going to shake that.
Comparison.
The rest of the day,
great.
dude, it's in there forever. I'm going to give it to everybody else. All right, I forgot nothing. That's all you get.
This is another thing about Oumuamua that I forget.
Have we named it yet? That's what it's called, right? Oumuamua? Is that a Hawaiian word?
Yes.
It feels like, yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It actually stands for, what is it? It's like the first one that arrives, a traveler from afar and the first to arrive, or something like that.
Yeah. And then something about history, I want to say. But yes, the name means there's a pretty cool story about
from afar, arriving first.
That's it.
Yeah, messenger from afar, or scout, right? But the idea is, or the story behind the name is, I think, pretty cool and inspiring, and a heck of a lot better than 1I 2017, blah, 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 blah.
You know, it's funny that we have a podcast on the network called Aftershock. It's like a scripted fiction podcast about sort of an island that shoots up in the middle of the Pacific out of nowhere, and there's a lot of Hawaiian culture that's referenced in it, and there is a character who kind of comes to the island, and the native islanders, or the people that have come from nearby, refer to them as Oumuamua, I believe, because it means like a traveler, like a scout, like you said.
I think the muamua, the doubling there is for emphasis. Anyway, it's a great story. Please read it when you get a chance. It's the kind of inspiring science stuff we love. And why is everybody interested in this thing? Again, you can find some great, easily accessible explanations of why. And why it is considered unusual in terms of its shape, its rotation, its speed, and its direction. And then you can also see really compelling arguments about how humanity figured out this is an interstellar object. Why is Loeb interested in this? He also notes that it's super weird. And again, he knows what he's talking about. But he is one of the most credible people to publicly say, we should also just check and see if someone made Oumuamua and it got sent here, or is it like a flying bumper essentially from a car wreck?
Just some sort of a space jetsam, I guess,
But think about this. He is working on a project to send these weird little solar sail microchips to other star systems, right? When Oumuamua shows up. So he is working on a project that would do this very thing. We wouldn't send large, potentially rocky cigar-shaped things that spin around on their axis every 7.5 hours or whatever. But he is thinking about doing a very similar thing, right? To send it to other star systems. So he's like, well, wait, maybe somebody already did that for us. What if this is just some kind of sensor system meant to fly past?
Mm-hmm. And there's a logic to it that I love. There's also a really cool stripe of humility there. The idea that, hey, if I have a good idea, then somebody else probably was thinking along those same lines, separated by chasms of space and time. But so he does, he gets unfairly, I would think, he gets people saying look at this nutso guy, when he's asking instead quite reasonable questions. Like you said, Matt, there's something familiar about this idea. And one of his other reasonable questions, and he's not the only one asking, is, hey, let's see if it emits radio signals. That's an easy thing to check. You know what I mean? It didn't, so far as they know.
Well, yeah. And we have to remember, everything we know about this object is we are observing it from so far away. We only know or believe, let's say infer and now believe, that it's cigar-shaped and spinning on its axis.
Because it could be ovular, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, because of the way it reflects light in a pattern, right? Over 7.5 hours. So we imagine, or we believe, we infer, humanity, scientists, that it is spinning because of the way it's reflecting the light from the sun as it's moving past us. But it's a tiny little blip on a screen when you're observing it. We don't actually have a picture of this thing. But if you go to NASA, they've got this 3D model that makes you think, oh, they know every ridge on this thing. They know exactly what it looks like and how it's shaped and all this stuff. But no. We have some really
modeling?
good assumptions.
Okay.
Right. Based on material science, on chemistry, and on the sensor analysis that is capable off a very, very minimum amount of information. So instead of, like, for anybody who would cast aspersion on the good folks at NASA, like, imagine getting as far as they have with such a small amount of knowledge. Like, that to me is one of the cool things about humans. And Loeb knows all about this. This is, by the way, Oumuamua is not the main focus of this story. It's a big part of the story because later, Professor Loeb made some other claims, doubling down on the interrogation, the possibility of extraterrestrial life. In 2019, he and one of his students, Amir Siraj, discovered something like a kissing cousin to Oumuamua, another object that they believe to be interstellar that crashed into Earth in 2014, leaving a bunch of strange stuff in its wake. Right now, it's known as CNEOS 2014-0108 or Interstellar Meteor 1.
What? Not nearly as sexy as Oumuamua, but you know, I get it. I get that it's a descriptive.
And it might not just be space rocks, Loeb is arguing. It might be genuine proof of extraterrestrial life. We're going to pause for a word from our sponsor. Here's where it gets crazy. All right, so like if he is tenured, right? And if you're tenured, you kind of have a safety net in your career.
Your credibility is your currency in that field, and nobody's going to go out on a limb about something as controversial or fringy seeming as extraterrestrial life or proof thereof. So if he's going to do that, he's probably going to have something to back it up, or at least a really strong belief that there is proof out there to back it up.
I don't know if this is a really good term, but I fell in love with this term, and I don't think it's a legit scientific term, but he starts conducting what we could call forensic astronomy.
Cool.
That sounds like a cool job, right?
I think so.
Put that on a Tinder profile.
Well, I mean, like, again, we talked about all this like space junk and debris and little detritus kind of floating out around there. And, you know, if you analyze it or if you have the wherewithal and the technology to do so, it can lead to clues, sort of like ice cores, you know, various things that point to historical goings on, you know, out there in the ink, like you say, Ben.
Out there in the ink, yeah. I mean, okay, so cast your memories back, folks. 8 January 2014, a fireball crashes from the sky, biblical level stuff. You know, religions get started based on things like this. It happens off the coast of Papua New Guinea, and everyone forgets about it. For 5 years, it is just recorded and it's sitting there until these guys start saying, what if we look through the records? What if we check everything humans know about objects from space and start looking for indicators? Kind of like, what if we profile heavenly objects, things with unusual speed or direction?
Well, let's not forget, things like that fly through Earth's atmosphere all the time and land somewhere, sometimes in the desert, sometimes in a house. It's happened before. We've reported on that before. Often they are very tiny objects, right? Sometimes they're a little bit bigger. Sometimes they kill the dinosaurs.
That was one time.
Give all meteors a bad rap from then on out, you know, just because they wreak havoc and annihilate entire civilizations and species.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right too. I think that's a great point, Matt. There's so much to look at. This is not a one afternoon thing for these guys.
Well, yeah, and what makes this object special, right? Because often it's just a meteorite that lands and hits the ground, and you're like, oh, well, that's some special rock right there, but it doesn't really mean much more than that.
And sorry, ding dong question real quick. Meteors are bigger. Meteorites are more diminutive meteors, but still quite large.
Yeah, so like I believe, check me on this, but a meteor is the one that hits. No, meteorite is the one that hits Earth, right?
Because it breaks off usually, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the deal? Okay. So
shout out to NASA.gov for meteors and meteorite facts.
Love that.
Yeah. Well, like, so imagine if it's a meteor shower, right? You're going to look up in the sky and see shooting stars that are just flying through, maybe impacting the atmosphere, but they just continue on their way. Meteorite is the one that lands. Got it. Okay.
And meteoroids are space rocks.
Heck yeah.
Okay, so
What about asteroids?
What about Metroids?
What about hemorrhoids? No, never mind.
wait, what's the name of the protagonist in Metroid?
Samus.
Samus, that's right. What a great name.
I almost said Seamus. That would have been a different game.
So Loeb and Siraj are looking through their files, and credit where it's due. Siraj has this moment where he's looking at this fireball from 2014, and he says, hey, this little guy is moving way too fast to be gravitationally bound to the sun, which other things in the solar system are. So where did it come from? What does that indicate about its origin? They say, okay, we got to go figure out, well, like we have to get boots on the ground, right? This is where that cool metal detector story comes in. And then like so much other science, they said, whew, we're going to need some cash because it's kind of out of the way to get to Papua New Guinea.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's much research to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And diving?
And diving is crazy expensive. Maritime sensors and research of that nature gets very expensive very quickly, as Paul and I can attest from Missing in Alaska. It's a fantastic show. Season 3 is on the way. Everybody, please check it out. You might hear some familiar voices. So several years after they start digging into this and they see this anomalous thing in the records, they say they go public and they say, look, this might be interstellar. We're pretty sure it's interstellar. It could also be something made rather than something that just happened. And across the planet, physicists and scholars trembled. There was a disturbance in the force, because that's stuff that makes the news when a Harvard expert says it. And so he's like, look, this could be alien technology. It could have used a solar sail.
It could have been like Starshot. Exactly. Again, why this is so fascinating, and also why other scientists in his field are like, come on, Avi. Come on, Avi.
Why does that sound? That sounds like
yourself out
Snatch,
there.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. His team, though, they soldier on, and in April of 2022, Amir writes an article confirming that the Department of Defense's Space Command has got together with NASA, because Space Command, for a militant society like the U.S., tends to have the best space sensors. I feel like that's a diplomatic way to say it. Anyway, so they got with those guys, figured out what they could, get past security clearances and all this other stuff. And they were able to confirm with 99.99999% certainty that this meteor was interstellar.
Whoa. So they confirmed that obvious suspicions might have, let's say they have 50% more sand to them, that it could be something made, even though that is an extraordinary claim, right? We do know that it came from somewhere else. So in May of 2023, that expedition that we were hoping was going to happen is happening.
We were not called, but that's fine. No, I just really want to get out to that part of the world, man. Don't you? Even though the capital's very dangerous.
Really?
It's super dangerous. That capital, yeah. Port Moresby, I think it's called.
I still want to go. Let's go.
Let's go. That's what they said. They said for science.
Yeah, and for like a month, they searched, and they're like, well, I don't know. And guess what? In June, they found something.
Yeah. Okay, so a little bit about the search. All right. They have a ship named the Silver Star. Nice. And they have, on the ship, they have a sled. It's like a metal detector and a sled from a Christmas movie had a kid. The sled is riddled with these molybdenum magnets on both sides, and they drag it across the seafloor and hope they pick stuff up. And this is beyond a needle in a haystack situation. The ocean's kind of big. They're looking for stuff that's kind of small. They owe a lot of thanks to a crypto mogul, as he's described, Charles Hoskinson, who says, yeah, you can use my jet. Here's 1.5 mil.
Heck yeah. That's how it works.
Nice one, Mr. H.
Look, seriously, thank you, billionaires, for wanting to do something interesting like this every once in a while. This is really good on you, billionaires.
I like that you didn't say specifically, thank you for doing something good. You said, thank you for doing something interesting.
Yeah, why not? If you got the money, let's at least make this thing a little bit weirder, you know?
Yeah, why not, right? So when they drag this sled across the floor of the ocean, they get a lot of junk. Black powder, volcanic ash, because volcanoes have been a thing for a while, still very popular in the Pacific Ocean. And Loeb starts getting, by his own admission, you can read this in an interview with Times of Israel and several other interviews, because he does them a lot. By his own admission, he and the team were getting kind of frustrated. You know, we came all this way. We're looking, we're doing the best science we can. We're filtering volcanic ash out, and then we're going through whatever's left with a microscope. And then they find spherules.
Mm-hmm.
They find a bunch of tiny little balls.
I was going to say, yeah, these are not substantial in any way. These are not pieces of a machine that anyone would recognize as pieces of a machine.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, they are like actually microscopic, right?
They're very, very small. I mean, they range in size, but we are talking millimeters, and they are composed of, this is what amazes Avi and the team. They're composed of iron. Okay, that's fine. That happens. Magnesium. Sure. Why not? Titanium. Right on.
We'd expect to see those, right?
We expect to see
in the
those.
universe, all over the place.
But we have a missing expected house guest here, a very negligible amount of nickel, which is, it's a mystery at this point. Nickel is supposed to be there. You know what I mean? You go to McDonald's, you order a Happy Meal. It doesn't have fries. What's going on? I guess they could do apple slices.
Seasoning comes from.
Yeah. In my mind, it's like if you imagine the atmosphere, but you find another atmosphere that appears to be breathable for humans, and it's got a ton of oxygen and a ton of carbon dioxide, but there's no nitrogen for some reason.
Right. Barely any. That's a great, that's a great comparison. And so Loeb explains this. He says, you know, compared to what we know about metal alloys that humans make, compared to what we know about asteroids and the familiar astrophysical sources, this stuff is weird. Also, thankfully, it's magnetic. That's the main way we're able to find it. And there are probably a lot more of these things out there, and they're probably a lot smaller particles. Like, we are just seeing the big chunks, right, of whatever this wreckage was. And so he asked those questions. And again, people say it's controversial for him to even bring these up. He says, he and his team, to be clear, a lot of people worked on this. He say, is it possible that this just occurred naturally and, to your point, Matt, came from a wildly different kind of environment or situation? Or did someone purposely make this thing? And that's a very dangerous question in the halls of academia.
Well, so, oh boy, I'm going to ICP territory.
Oh boy.
How does one become magnetized if one is a metal?
I thought you were going to drop some bars from the great Malenko.
Well, I don't know what that is. But I'm just wondering.
Juggalo.
But I'm just wondering. I don't know. No. Sorry. I'm just wondering if it's possible. Like, if you find a magnetized object or something, usually I would assume, and maybe I'm completely wrong with this, I would assume that it became magnetized over time. Because it's a metal that's capable of being magnetized, and then it's been basically affected by the fields for long enough that it then gains those properties. But like ICP, I don't know how magnets work. Okay,
I think you have to. I don't know either. I know Magneto was right in the comics. That has nothing to do with anything. I just want to say that. Magneto was right. But to become magnetized, a substance or material has to have the ability to be magnetic, right? Like you can't magnetize everything, and it has to enter the magnetic field of an existing magnet. I don't know. So
like Earth.
Right. So I think that's the basis of it. They talk about it in the paper they published, which you can read for free online, and we'll tell you how to find that one at the end. Is that I think we're on base. I think that's roughly right. Like magnetization is like radicalization. You hang out with others.
Well, I think so, but it causes the electrons get kind of angled in one direction, right? When you're magnetized, and that occurs through some process. There are a lot of different types of magnetism. I just remember as a kid doing those experiments where you run a magnet across in one direction, like a metal substance. And if you do it long enough, that metal substance, if it is able to be magnetized, becomes magnetized because you're affecting its field and its electrons. But so if you find something on the bottom of the ocean floor, maybe it's been there for a long time and it got magnetized through some process of running over, I don't know, another magnetized thing. I just don't understand it. And I feel like such a dum-dum.
And so critics, again, accuse Professor Loeb of being too credulous, right? To having too much of a tendency to believe in unproven things. But if you look at his actual statements past the headlines, the stuff that he is stating as fact is all logical and grounded. The stuff people have a problem with him saying, that stuff, that it's what-ifing. It's just asking questions, right? And I think that's fine to do so. And you could argue that's the heart of good science. He's just talking openly about the possibilities because it hasn't been disproven. So, like, for example, he talks in depth where he says, basically says, this is already a win for science. We don't need aliens. We found another interstellar object. This is something from outside the solar system, and unlike Oumuamua, this is the one we can touch, right? Because humanity could send a craft to chase Oumuamua. It would be very expensive. It would take a long time.
How do you catch up to that thing?
Exactly. And I mean, when you have questions like that, it becomes a matter of priority, where it's like, is this something that is reasonably going to yield results?
Exactly. And it's such a gamble. I mean, just the math already is tough. So this is, even without the idea of extraterrestrials, this stuff here on the ocean floor by Papua New Guinea, it's great. It's a huge win for science. And people are only, I think, looking askance at it because they think maybe he's asking the questions he's pondering are too provocative. Because he says, look, is this technological in origin? Droplets melted from a semiconductor or an electric circuit. Would that explain, magnetism?
There's something interesting too, because if you did design something like this and you imagined it would one day interact with an atmosphere at the speeds it's traveling to reach another star system, you imagine it's going to break up and probably, be broken down to its constituent alloys and stuff, right? Because it's going to probably burn up unless it's made out of something that is designed to both withstand that heat and pressure and the impact into either a water or rocky substance as it impacts a planet. I mean, to be the interstellar spacecraft solar wind thing, Starshot, that he was developing is meant to fly past, take some pictures, and then its mission is over. It just continues barreling through towards another star, maybe at some point in its life, but humanity would never know what happened to that thing after it makes its first pass. If there's an extraterrestrial civilization that makes something like this, and it's designed to fly through a star system and maybe accidentally impacts Earth, like the information or the usefulness of this machine, theoretically, would have already been done. if you imagine it's sending signal as it's flying through, entering our star system. Oh, there's a planet here. It's sending information back to wherever it originated. Oh, there's a planet, and and it's gone because it crashed.
Right.
But it's fulfilled its purpose. Nobody's going to come looking for it, but now that civilization would know that this planet is here.
Earth is compromised.
I mean, but really, right. It's like it's almost like sending out spores the way Starshot was designed. If there's another civilization doing that with just a much more robust substance, it does feel like a very close potential one-to-one.
And there are more questions too. I mean, I think it was Emerson who said, in every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They return to us with a sort of alienated majesty. But of course, we see ourselves in these things. And the neat thing is that this idea, this theory, these suppositions do line up, right? They do jibe together. And he is not saying by any means that is true, nor is he saying it's confirmed. He's saying it makes you wonder, I mean, why is this alloy tougher than iron meteors, right? And what other questions do these initial questions inspire? Here's a question from our producer. When are these guys going to take an ad break?
Is it now, Ben? Is it now?
I think we owe it to Mr. Decant. And we've returned. All right, here's where we're at now. All in all, Loeb's team has recovered something in the area of 50 of these tiny, spherical, mostly iron fragments. Again, the controversy stuff, I think, gets a little overblown, and it's unfair to the science being conducted, but we should note that not all scientists are necessarily persuaded that these materials are interstellar at this point. They're saying there could be other explanations, right? Like terrestrial pollution, sad reality of the ocean. There's a lot of human-made stuff down there. Is it possible that we just haven't recognized what human-made kind of thing produced this?
But what of the nickel, Ben?
But what about the nickel? We're not talking Royce the 5.9. Yeah, the nickel part is really interesting.
It is. The lack of nickel really makes Avi and everybody else involved go, well, that's kind of weird.
It takes it past the threshold of philosophy, as Loeb said. Yeah,
for sure. But again, for a lot of other people, what you just said, Ben, potential pollution or some other thing we're just not accounting for is a possibility here of why there's no nickel, I guess.
Yeah, we have to be fair and say that. And, Professor Loeb, for his part, he acknowledges that all of the investigative avenues must be explored, and that he also says multiple times that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Dope. Of course he's going to say that. He's an astronomer from Harvard. Right? I feel like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But can we go back to Oumuamua, Ben? To me is one of the most fascinating points in this whole episode.
Yeah, in Scientific American, and he appears in multiple Scientific American articles, as do his colleagues, etc. In one recent one, he says, at this time, the possibility that any UAP are extraterrestrial is highly speculative, emphasis ours. And he says, but if we entertain this possibility for fun, then the tumbling motion of Oumuamua could potentially be meant to scan signals from all possible directions.
So let's talk about that. So we believe Oumuamua is shaped like a cigar, right? And then imagine it is spinning like long ways round, right?
And then also rotating clockwise.
Exactly. In this weird tumbling motion. And so imagine if you have sensors on both ends of the cigar, and as it's tumbling around, it's just scanning literally everything. Did you guys see that movie Prometheus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had issues, but there were things about it that I loved. I loved a depiction of like ancient, almost Lovecraftian beings.
I love it too. Space is haunted.
Yeah. I love that.
Well, this is not the same thing, but this is what the picture in my mind. They have these little spheres that one of the engineers puts up into the, like, just kind of lets it levitate, and then it flies.
The gray boys, right? Those are called the engineers, the big giant gray guys.
Yeah.
Well, this is the human team when they arrive for the first time.
Oh, you're talking about the things that shoot out the lasers and map the tunnels and
they
stuff?
scan the tunnels.
Yep,
like that.
Yep.
So
sorry, that's funny. Aren't the other guys also called engineers?
Literally, yes. No, you're right. My bad.
Spoiler.
I didn't mean to.
The Eldritch astronauts are called the engineers.
Yes, one of the human teams that is a specialist in mapping these things uses that technology to scan those tunnels, right, and the shape of the structure. And I'm imagining something like this on a much larger scale, but I don't know why it wouldn't be shaped like a sphere, or why you wouldn't design it as a sphere, because you could potentially have it spin in a much more, efficient fashion. It would also travel more efficiently.
If it is intelligently designed, then we have to also allow for possible cultural prejudices, right?
Yeah.
In terms of design, like why
everything's shaped like that here.
Yeah. Why do humans use base 10 in numbers, right? Why is that the one?
I never thought about that. Jeez, Ben, we are so self-involved, aren't we?
No, you're absolutely right. But in this idea, Avi Loeb is saying, well, why not? Like, what if it just for fun? Like, what if it is spinning around because it's got really powerful scanners on those two ends, and it's just doing what it needs to do? But here's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's thought that Oumuamua has been traveling for hundreds of millions of years.
Yes.
So
how isn't it broken apart by then? Whatever it might be, if it just
the sheer
if it is
emptiness
space rock
of space and traveling between star systems, at least theoretically. But the thing has been bombarded by cosmic rays and appears to have this red hue. At least scientists believe, because of its irradiation, basically over hundreds of millions of years.
It's been through some rough roads, is what they're saying, right?
I guess just if you send something out like that, is it like our Voyager system where we're monitoring it for the entirety of its trek, or do we lose contact with it?
Interesting,
right?
At some point, or is it a standalone? Yeah, just so many possibilities.
You're saying it might be some sort of alien space station that's out there exploring and monitoring the cosmos like we do with ours.
Or kamikaze for science.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Thing, right?
Or just a thing that goes and it just sees what it sees, and at some point its mission is completed and it's sent all that information back to wherever it originated. I don't know. For me, sensor systems are the concept of sensor systems that have just been sent out, not just our way, but towards a bunch of other stars, feels like a super plausible thing.
I mean, it seems like a logical inevitability for any civilization that is interested in space exploration. You want to see what's out there, so you have to build eyes and ears. And then put those things on some kind of device to go a little further than you can on your planet. I mean, I think it's brilliant. It also asks the question, if this was designed intelligently, dare we say, then how would the designers monitor it, right? What would be their medium of communication? Is it something that humans are aware of? Is it something they could remotely understand? You know, are there a bunch of like little, maybe on their world, the dominant life form is just like a naturally spinning cylinder. And those guys are like, well, of course, this is how we're going to build the satellite, right? They'll get it. Maybe they're like, all the evidence we have proves that all life in the universe is spinning cylinders. So they'll recognize this if they're also alive.
That's it. Well, but would you want to be found? I think Avi's next point in this quote you found, Ben, is, again, the next mind-blowing thing.
Yeah, dark forest. So there's the idea that is so weird, a cosmic stitch-up that Oumuamua could have arranged to appear as coming from the neutral local standard of rest, what he calls it, the galactic parking lot, such that it disguises its origin.
Yeah. I mean, would you really want a super powerful advanced civilization to know exactly where you are? I mean, the way we did with Voyager and Voyager 2, the one that had the golden plate on it, the golden disc.
It's Vajir in Star Trek.
Would you really want to just say, hey, we're down here? It feels like maybe a short-sighted move, but I don't know.
Yeah, the dark forest, right? What's the old riddle? What's the spookiest message you could receive from like alien civilization? It's just be quiet. They're listening. Right?
Who's listening? What?
And no one would send that message because it would give them away too. I mean, this is not proven, but it's worth thinking about. It's just so, as he said, literally, it's fun to explore it conceptually. And he also ends that quote by saying this: rather than simply wonder about possible scenarios, we should collect better scientific data and clarify the nature of UAP. This is great.
Boom. Yep.
I mean, how is that controversial? You know?
Nope, that's it. That's the thing.
He also asked, what if this thing from 2014, what if it somehow tagged Earth and then gave Oumuamua a destination point?
Whoa.
That's kind of cool, right? I have no idea how that would work, because how would you observe it?
The thing in 2014 enters the atmosphere and it's still sending information back to its originating point as it's entering the atmosphere, and it goes, oh, this planet has a viable atmosphere for life. So then Oumuamua comes by and is like, let's verify that information, and they verify. And then in 2025, they show up.
Yeah, or they just drove by and we're like, we could do a little better. Earth is kind of mids. You know what I mean? Like, keep the windows rolled up. This is a bad neighborhood.
Oh, geez.
I don't know, though. I mean, no. What's your take on these concepts, man?
Well, I'm no rocket scientist, but it fascinates me, and I think it's endlessly curiosity-inducing. And then to hear somebody with this level of expertise kind of ruminating on some of this stuff, it really opens up the mind to the possibilities. I can't really speak to the specifics of what this thing might be, but I am fascinated by the fact that it's existed for so long and has moved so far and maintained, its size, I guess, relative size and shape, based on what we know. Because, I mean, if it was space wreckage or debris or whatever, you think it would have broken apart over time or gotten smaller or fragmented or whatever.
Maybe it did. Maybe the original thing
of course.
was a much bigger spinny cylinder, right?
Yeah. They're all spinny cylinders, bro.
It's just spinny cylinders all the way down.
That's exactly all the way down. So I want to read something from NASA's website. They've got an overview on Oumuamua. And it speaks to this concept that potentially that its originating point was disguised. Just because, again, I think this makes the mind wonder if it's a possibility. Here we go. Preliminary orbital calculations suggest the object came from the approximate direction of the bright star Vega. That's from our perspective here on Earth, right?
Not Street Fighter 2 Vega.
With the claws. That's in the northern constellation of Lyra, I guess, if you're looking up there. However, it took so long for the interstellar object to make the journey, even at the speed of about 59,000 miles per hour, that's 26.4 kilometers per second, that Vega was nowhere near that originating position when Oumuamua was there 300,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So
it came from somewhere that a star system has moved into at this point when it, 300,000 years after it left. So it just makes you go, man, there's more to this.
I love it. I love the idea. The speculative stuff gets a lot of attention, and it should, because it's smart to think about it, and it brings more and more questions as way leads on to way. But again, the science behind this too is legitimate. This is a credible series of investigations. They're not playing around. They're not trying to bilk people in some weird, buy a piece of interstellar rock scheme or whatever. So I have great respect for that. And I also, it reminds me of the 3-body problem, or that the series that came out recently, or came out years ago, that plays with the idea of dark forest quite a bit. And it's ultimately, if you think through it with brutal logic, then it feels like a prisoner's dilemma, right? You simply cannot risk the entirety of your civilization on the gamble that another civilization will understand, acknowledge, or be cool with you. Those are all 3 tremendous assumptions, and to get even one of them wrong could have existential consequences.
Yeah, that's so terrifying. If a civilization was just like, oh, well, you're who? I don't have time for this. And literally like the wave of a hand kind of thing. And we're just, whoop, we're gone.
Gone. Yeah. Like, this is we have other sons at home. Yeah. But with that, I think there's something we can conclude, which is Loeb is not claiming that he and his team or anyone have found proof of extraterrestrial civilization or life. He is saying that they have found something extraordinarily strange. And at this point, he is asking, what if? And he's one of the smartest, most well-positioned people to ask that sort of question. That's the soul of good science. I also, oh God, I love the idea of haunted space. And I just, if you guys are okay with it, I have to ask you about this comic book series. I want to see if you've read it. Outer Darkness.
I don't think I know that one.
You are going to love it.
Cool.
It's like, imagine all your favorite horror movies, hauntings, demonic possession, Lovecraft stuff, really weird period fiction. It's all in there. It's an absolute great read.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about this. It's on a list of ones that I'm supposed to pick up.
You know what? There's another really good one called Nameless by Grant Morrison.
I love Nameless.
That one's upsetting.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
It gets gnarly. I would say the week of stomach maybe need not apply, but that's another good existential, like, what's out there, like almost Event Horizon-esque kind of like space as a portal to hell kind of vibes.
Evil Gnosticism, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and then, oh man, there's so many good horror space graphic novels and explorations. Nameless is a stem to stern banger, super optimistic and inspiring. Read it and you'll see what we mean.
Yeah. Note the tinge of sarcasm.
Outer Darkness, also stem to stern banger. That's going to be a reread for me, gents. And we might, speaking of rereading, we might need to give the science a little more time and perhaps one day ask Professor L himself to drop by the show. What do you guys think?
Avi, come on down. Come on out.
Avi.
He does again seem like a person acting in good faith with sincerity.
Yeah.
And he just, like the rest of us, he wants to believe, like he wants the truth to be out there.
Can you imagine actually talking with him? Please, yeah. Avi, please come do an episode. That would be awesome.
Yeah, we could. Yeah. Let's make it happen. And at that point, you know who else we would like to hear from? You, fellow conspiracy realists. Let us know what's on your mind. If you have proof of extraterrestrial civilization, of course, as always, hit us up. Or if you don't, that's fine too. If you just have some cool ideas, we love to hear those.
Well, yeah, we love to hear anything that you've got to offer. You can reach out to us in a multitude of ways. Firstly, via your social media platform of choice, where you can find the handle Conspiracy Stuff on YouTube, X, Twitter, and Facebook, where we have our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy. On Instagram and TikTok, we are Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Hey, do you like using your phone and your mouth to make sounds that other people can understand? Why not call 1-833-STDWYTK? It's our voicemail system. When you call in, give yourself a cool nickname. Avi, you can just call yourself your real name if you call in. Please do. And let us know if we can use your message on the air. If you got more to say than can fit in that 3-minute voicemail, why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.